Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 1162 for May 17th, 2026. Coming up in a few minutes.
The basalt rock that we use there is actually from near Portree on the Isle of Skye, so it is actually Skye basalt rock. It's about 59 million years old, and those rocks were then put into this kind of metal pizza oven-esque thing, and then they superheated it, and it's basically just the thermal energy from those volcanic rocks that gently toasted the insides of that American oak.
That's Diageo Luxury Ambassador Ewan Morgan on the finishing process for the new Talisker Magma. At 47 years of age, it's the oldest Talisker ever bottled. We'll taste that whiskey and talk about the new rare series of ultra-limited whiskeys with Ewan on WhiskyCast In-Depth. I'll have the week's tasting notes and much more on this week's WhiskyCast, whiskey's longest-running and most awarded podcast series.
Hey friends, it's Gabriel with Jewers here. If you're watching the U.S. Open this year, or you've got Father's Day coming up and you just want to get it right, there's a bottle that I would keep an eye out for. I'll explain.
Let's get started with the news. Brown-Forman has rejected Sazerac's $15 billion offer to buy the Louisville-based company. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. Brown family members were reportedly against selling the family-controlled company, with some family members unhappy with their share of control in the merged companies. Sazerac reportedly had two investment banks ready to finance the deal, which could have reached $17 billion when you count Brown-Forman's debt. Now, that rejection could potentially land Brown-Forman in court. Analysts at Bernstein & Company warned their clients that Brown-Forman's Class B shareholders, who have no voting rights, could organize a class action lawsuit against the company for rejecting the Sazerac offer. Brown family members control only 26% of the company outright, but hold 73% of the Class A shares that come with voting rights. Just waiting for a lawyer to take the case now. New Diageo CEO Sir Dave Lewis is putting his stamp on the world's largest alcoholic beverages company. Bloomberg reports several key executives are leaving the company, including North American marketing chief Ed Pilkington. North America is the focus of Lewis's restructuring plans. Diageo's Africa president and chief human resources officer are also said to be on the way out. It's a light news week, but we have several new whiskeys to talk about this week. Luxco's Penelope Bourbon is launching a new Architects of Golf collection that will eventually encompass 18 different whiskeys, each one differentiated by the time and intensity of the stave finishing process. The first 3 bottles in the collection are rolling out now to retailers, with a recommended retail price of $59.99 a bottle. Ireland's Teeling Whiskey has released a new distillery-exclusive bottling. It's a Negroni cask-finished whiskey that's available through the Teeling online shop and at the distillery in Dublin for €60 a bottle. Shand Import is getting into the Irish whiskey business with Lady Luck, a 6-year-old Irish whiskey with a higher malt component. It's available in Europe and has just been launched in California and Nevada. No word on pricing. Seagram's Seven Crown is one of those whiskeys that never gets much attention from connoisseurs, but does well with mainstream whiskey drinkers. Now, Diageo is releasing a Seagram's Seven Crown Apple Pie seasonal offering. It's priced at a whopping $11.99 a bottle. Isle of Arran Distillery is bringing back the Arran 14-year-old to its core range, along with adding a new 30-year-old expression to the lineup. They'll go on sale starting next Tuesday at the Arran web shop and will be available at whiskey specialist shops worldwide. No word yet on pricing. Nashville's Big Machine Distillery is releasing a new Borchetta bourbon to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Bobby Rahall's 1986 Indianapolis 500 victory. It's a cask-strength Tennessee bourbon created in collaboration with Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing under the Small Batch Grand Prix Series banner. It'll launch officially at this Sunday's Indy 500, but bottles are available for pre-purchase at the Big Machine website for $299.99 each. Lexington, Kentucky's Town Branch Distillery is releasing a 6-year-old wheated bourbon that includes whiskeys up to 8 years old in the blend. It's available at the distillery and retailers for $49.99 a bottle. The independent bottler Rare Find is releasing 3 Kalila single-cask bottlings for Fay Gilles. All 3 are 12 years old. One is finished in a Ruby Port Octave cask, one in a Tawny Port Octave cask, and one finished in a Madeira Octave cask. They'll go on sale this Friday at select UK retailers for £99.99 each. Bunnahabhain is out with the second release in its Westering Home Collection, and I'm going to butcher the name. Anquan Garb translates to the rough seas in Scots Gaelic, and this 15-year-old single malt is finished in white port casks from Portugal's Douro Valley. It's a cask-strength whiskey priced at £137.95 through hard-to-find whiskey. And Chattanooga Whiskey Company has released its latest bottled-in-bond vintage bourbon. The Spring 2022 edition is a blend of 2 mash bills, including a 5-grain mash bill featuring 3 types of dark caramel malt. It'll be available in 21 states and online through Sealbox for $52.99 a bottle. And finally, our friends at Dewar's are marking an anniversary this week. Friday, May 15th, was the 180th anniversary of the date John Dewar opened his shop in Perth, Scotland. Congratulations. You can keep up on the latest whiskey news all week long at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. Let's check the calendar now and see what's happening around the world of whiskey. Tickets are still available for the Whiskey Exchange's Star Hill Farm and Maker's Mark tasting with Master Distiller Blake Layfield Wednesday night at the Great Portland Street Shop in London. They're also available for a tasting with Sukhinder Singh on the 27th. Fay Gilles, the Isle Festival of Malt and Music, gets underway this Friday and runs through May 30th on Isla. The Aberdeen Whiskey Shop hosts a Lindoris Abbey whiskey tasting on May 29th. Tickets went on sale this week for a Knob Creek bourbon dinner with Fred No, June 3rd at Bourbon's Bistro in Louisville. Whiskey Live Dublin is June 5th and 6th, and the Fraser History Museum in Louisville has a Jackson Purchase bourbon event with Craig Beam on June 5th. If you're organizing a whiskey event, let us know about it. We'll add it to the calendars at whiskycast.com and the WhiskyCast community app.
Every year, we've been releasing a Dewar's 19-year-old Champions Edition alongside the U.S. Open, a limited release whiskey that's directly tied to the tournament. Now, 19 years is not a number you see every day on a bottle of whiskey, but in golf it kind of makes sense. The 19th hole, that round after the round. The stories usually are a little better than some folks' scorecards. This year, the championships at Shinnecock Hills in Long Island, and instead of just putting that on the label and calling it a day, we build it into the whiskey. After 19 years of maturation, this whiskey's finished in Cabernet Franc wine casks from Wolfer Estate, right there on Long Island. So there's a real connection to the place, not just in name, but in the liquid itself. On the palate, you'll get some of that red fruit, with a bit of floral lift and a touch of spice from the higher ABV, but it still drinks like Dewar's. Honeyed, soft oak, balanced, nothing is out of place. It also lands right around Father's Day, making it an easy gift. Limited release, once a year, with Shinnecock Hills on the bottle. Great for golf fans, but just really a well-made whiskey. Keep an eye out for it. Copyright 2026, Dewar's is a trademark. Imported by John Dewar & Sons Company, Coral Gables, Florida. Blended Scotch whiskey, 43% alcohol by volume.
WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey. Diageo has more than 10 million casks of whiskey maturing in Scotland, and a handful of them went through a special toasting process to create Talisker Magma, a 47-year-old Scotch whiskey that is the oldest Talisker ever bottled. Before we hear from Diageo Luxury Ambassador Ewan Morgan, I owe you an apology. There was a technical problem with my recording of our interview. I was testing a new recording setup, and it used the wrong microphone for my end of the conversation. As you'll hear, the test did not work out as well as I'd hoped, But the conversation itself was good, and that outweighs the technical problems. Once again, I'm sorry, but here's my conversation with Diageo's Ewan Morgan. Welcome back to WhiskyCast, Ewan. It's been a while.
It has been a while, yes. It's very nice to be back, Mark. Lovely to see you. I have been on my whiskey travels. Like I told you a minute ago, I just walked in my front door 10 minutes ago, but here we are again.
We're down in Miami for the F1 Grand Prix.
That's correct, yeah. I was down there last week for Formula One. We were sampling people on the new Rare Series, but we were also tasting people on the Talisker 47 as well, which I know we're going to be talking about today. But yeah, Formula One was amazing.
Let's talk about that Talisker 47. What makes it unusual besides the fact that it's the oldest Talisker bottle ever bottled?
Well, you're right. It is the oldest that we've released. What makes this one unique, I guess, it's the finishing casks that we use here, where we're using virgin American oak. And those are from Missouri, that wood. So obviously very slow growing American oak. And what we did with the cask finishing on this one that makes it a little unique, certainly for us, is that we didn't char the inside of it like you normally would American oak. What we did was we actually toasted the inside of it. We sent these barrels to a specialized cooperage in France. And what we did was we put basalt rock, which is from the Isle of Skye, so volcanic rock, and we put it into this heating element. It kind of looks a little bit like a pizza oven that stays static, and then the barrel ends are taken off and they're on rollers and they slowly rotate, and you have this kind of thermal radiation energy that's like gently toasting the insides of these casks. So using volcanic rock, hence the name Magma, a fairly unique process. We did it once before for one of the special releases, but doing it on such an aged liquid, we saw a really unique spicy characteristic that came through on this. And I know we're going to be doing a little tasting on it in a minute, but yeah, it's a fairly fascinating process.
I know it's been done before, but to do it with such an aged whiskey is really taking a chance, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I guess so. Our blending teams know pretty much how liquids will react to different cask finishes. And because we'd had basically a go at it before, we kind of knew the flavor profiles that it would lend to it. So a little bit more of that kind of eugenol, clovey spice note that's going to come through. But there's a really nice, gentle, peppery characteristic that's in there as well. So some gentle baking spice notes. And then underneath that, obviously, you've got that classic Talisker DNA, which is that really nice maritime characteristic, that sea kelp note in there. And then obviously that wonderful controlled integrated smoke that everybody knows and loves about Talisker. So yeah, we hadn't done it before, but we pretty much knew what it was going to taste like, and it came out as planned.
Let's taste it. They've sent me a sample of it.
Okay. I will open mine. Is this the first time tasting it, Mark?
Yes.
All right. So let me, once you've poured it out.
Yeah, there's a small cap in here that I'm trying to pry out.
Whilst you're doing that, I'll just kind of explain a little bit more about the process.
Sure.
So it is virgin American oak. Like I say, it's from Missouri. It's actually from the Salem Plateau. It was naturally air dry for 24 months. So they let it kind of sit and rest in outdoors in the air just to kind of get a lot of those astringent notes out of the wood and just let it season very naturally. The basalt rock that we use there is actually from near Portree on the Isle of Skye. So it is actually Skye basalt rock. It's about 59 million years old. And those rocks were then put into this kind of metal pizza oven-esque thing. And then they superheated it. And it's basically just the thermal energy from those volcanic rocks that gently toasted the insides of that American oak.
Well, I'm definitely getting the maritime influence on the nose.
And I always start my nose above the 12 o'clock position of the glass and then move it down, because the esters will sit up at the top. So you'll get more of the fruit characteristic up here. Then as you get further down, you get more of that more ozone maritime note. And then your smoke, your wood sugars will be towards the bottom. So up at the top, I do get a really nice, almost like apple strudely baked apple note. Then further down, that's where you start to get into that spicy note. So that clove starts to come through. And then your gentle, wonderful vanilla notes in there, that oaky characteristic. And then at the bottom, that's where a lot more of your sugars and your smoke are going to sit down here. So Talisker, as you know, Mark, is a medium peated single malt. So it's not huge smoke characteristic in here. Like I said earlier, it's this really nice integration of the seaside, the smoke, and then this really nice peppery characteristic, as well as your wonderful apple strudel note towards the top of it.
I'm getting that apple strudel note. I'm also getting some sandalwood.
Yeah. A little sandalwood in there, a little kombu as well. So your seaweedy note, which gives when you taste it, has a really nice gentle umami characteristic to it. But then there is certainly towards the bottom, you've got a little bit of that caramel toffee note. And if you've ever had tablet in Scotland, that's the smell I get from that. For the folks out there who've never had tablet before, it's basically condensed milk and then caramelized sugar mixed together. And it comes in this kind of almost like crystallized sugary bar that you eat. And it's very toffee forward. And that's what I get from this, but with a little Malden smoked salt in there as well.
Well, let's taste it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Again, I think we've got a really nice kind of balance and kind of synergy between the nose and the palate here. The toffee is definitely still there. You've got that Talisker chili catch, and they're almost like Sichuan pepper, like numbing note that's going to come out of this. There's a really nice balance going on here with that warmth, but then you've got this really incredible, again, that baking spice clovey note that's sitting within this. It's just a delicious whiskey, and I think that 4-month finish, which is a very short finish, has given a huge amount of character to this in terms of that really nice integration of that baking spice clovey note, as well as that really wonderful Talisker DNA.
Yeah, I was going to say that the Talisker DNA is very prevalent in this one.
Yeah. And then the finish is really nice. It's quite a gentle tapering on the finish. But then you've got this really nice, it's still very warming. So it's kind of holds that kind of really nice kind of warm palate. And that then carries the flavors in there. So it tails off into a little bit more of that umami kind of interweave of characteristics.
Very nice.
Delicious. This is my lunch, by the way. I just got it the door, so.
Let's talk about the Rare Series. You also showed that off in Miami as well. Tell us about that one, because that's whiskeys that most of us will never get to try.
Yeah, so they are very limited, as you know. But we kind of previewed them for folks when we were down at Formula One. And then I did a dinner just the other night in New York as well, where we tasted some very lucky folks on these liquids. But, we've got 5 in this initial release, and they're all very, very different. But yeah, very limited. Some We have a ghost distillery in there. We have a 55-year-old Glenurry Royal distilled in 1970. So it's very rare to see Glenurry Royal anyway, but to see something of that age, with that much vibrancy, and also the ABV on that one is just incredible. So the ABV of a 55-year-old Glenurry Royal is 62.4, Mark, which is almost unheard of at that age to see that ABV and that amount of, that vibrancy of characteristics going to come through from it. It's a genuine unicorn of a whiskey. But the other ones that we took folks through, unbelievable Clynelish from 1983, which has everything you love about Clynelish. So that tropical heart, that pina colada with candle wax, a really, really nice spicy note to that one. It's at 49.5. There's only 16 bottles of that in the United States. So we don't expect them to be around for very long. There's a Blair Athol as well. Again, it's not very often you see Blair Athol here in the United States as a single malt. You see it in the UK and Europe as part of the Flora and Fauna series. But we have a 34-year-old from 1991. And that's in ex Oloroso and then transferred into Pedro Jimenez. So a really wonderful, rich, fruity characteristic. And I kind of akin it to sticky toffee pudding. It's a really nice dessert quality to it. There's 25 bottles of that in the United States, and that's at 50.8. And then we had a 1992 Talisker, Mark, which is unbelievable, a 33-year-old. Again, this is one that has all of the kind of hallmarks of what you would expect to see from Talisker. But this has been finished for 20 years of its 33 years in Amoroso casks. So like the old Distiller's Edition, which was also finished in Amoroso, it lends this incredible chocolatey, nutty note to it. So it's got this almost like Ferrero Rocher meets Talisker. It's spectacular. And then possibly my favorite of them is this Kalila. It's Kalila's 42-year-old from 1983, all in refill American oak and then transferred into European puncheons. And the ABV on that one is 56.4. There's only 30 bottles of that available in the United States. But I think I'm vacillating between the Clynelish and the Kalila. But if I had to Sophie's choice it at this point, I think the Kalila is currently my favorite.
Now, the Glenurry Royal is the oldest whiskey Diageo's ever bottled, correct?
At 55 years, yeah. It's an old liquid. And as you say, it's dwindling stock. And that means that it is from a distillery that closed, will never, ever produce whiskey again. So you really are tasting a snapshot of Scotch whiskey history from a distillery that closed in 1985. So we don't have very much Glenurry Royal left. And folks out there might recognize the name because we did a Johnny Walker Ghost and Rare Glenurry Royal edition. So they may recognize the name from that, but it's very rare to see Glenurry Royal, and certainly to see something of 55 years at that ABV. It really is a genuine unicorn.
How do you keep track of these rare casks in the middle of all the millions of casks Diageo has?
It's an excellent question. We have over 10 million in inventory in Scotland at any given time. It's really down to our blending team, so led by Dr. Emma Walker. And once things get over a certain age threshold, then they keep a closer eye on them because they don't want the cask to dominate the distillery character. And you don't want the apex point of oak going beyond the distillery character. So they are aware of these rare and old casks in there, and they do frequent checks in on them. So they go and see them, and they'll do little samples from them just to see where the maturation point is at. Should it come out off cask or get re-racked into a very inactive cask so they can do a longer maturation? Or is it time to pull it because it's kind of reached that point of perfection? So they do keep a watchful eye over these rarefied stocks.
What's next for the Rare Series?
There will be more. I'm not really allowed to tell you what or when, but definitely keep an eye out because they are, like I say, they are such limited releases. The interest in them has been spectacular. I've been taking calls from lots of whiskey collectors all over the country about them. And so there will be more, but I can't tell you any more at this point.
How could someone, if they wanted to get their hands on one of these?
They contact me, or they can go through the Diageo Rare and Exceptional US site. So if you just type in Diageo Rare and Exceptional, it'll pop up, and then you will see the portfolio in there, and there'll be a contact form. So if people are interested in it, they can contact me through that.
Same thing for the Talisker 47.
Talisker 47 is a little more available. So at your local liquor store should be able to get it. It is distributed all over the country, so I'd have a word with your local retailer on that one. That one is a little easier to get their hands on, whereas the Rare Series is very heavily allocated.
Thanks to Ewan Morgan for joining us this week on WhiskyCast In-Depth. And once again, I'm sorry about the poor quality of the audio. It won't happen again. WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey.
Our story begins in the wilds of County Wicklow, the Garden of Ireland, a place where nature moves slowly and meaningfully. Some whiskies blend in. Glendalough Double Barrel stands apart. I'm Rowdy Rooney, head distiller here at Glendalough, and I personally oversee our whiskey making process from start to finish. We do things slowly, and we do them right. We start with a smooth, single-grain Irish whiskey. We age it in flame-charred American oak for soft vanilla and a honeyed depth. Then we finish it in Oloroso casks from a small bodega in Spain. Casks we season and ship ourselves to make sure the wood is still alive with character when it arrives. That kind of care gives Glendalough Double Barrel its rich layers of dried fruit, warm spice, and signature smoothness. This is a whiskey at its own pace, and it's worth every second. This is Glendalough Double Barrel, crafted to stand apart.
This week's tasting notes are brought to you by Lost Lantern, shining a light on the independent spirit. Let's begin with the Talisker Magma. It's bottled at 48.8% ABV, and the nose has touches of minerals, wet sand, and hints of toffee, smoke, sandalwood, and oak. The taste has a creamy texture with notes of chili peppers, cinnamon, dried seaweed, apple strudel, and a hint of smoke. And the finish is long with lingering spices and smoke. I'm scoring the Talisker Magma a 94. Preservation Distillery in Bardstown, Kentucky, released Lot 1 of the 2026 Very Old St. Nick Immaculata this weekend. I received a sample of it the other day. It's bottled at 59.1% ABV. The nose has touches of tobacco, leather, caramel, red apples, and oak tannins. The taste is dominated by black pepper and cinnamon notes that fade slowly to reveal cocoa, leather, tobacco, and oak tannins. Water brings out a touch of milk chocolate on the nose and palate, and the finish is long with lingering spices and a touch of oak. I'm scoring the Very Old St. Nick Immaculata a 93. I mentioned the chicken cock wheated bourbon last time around and received a sample of it this week. It's bottled at 47% ABV, and the nose is grainy with honey, caramel, butterscotch, and tobacco notes. The taste is thick and chewy with black pepper, balanced by honey and butterscotch, and the finish is long and spicy. I'm scoring the chicken cock wheated bourbon a 91. Finally, Lofted Spirits released the new Green River honey-finished bourbon this week, finished by dumping honey right into the bourbon barrel. It's bottled at 46% ABV, and the nose has lots of honey, along with butterscotch, and a hint of allspice. The taste is thick and honey-influenced with black pepper and allspice notes, and the finish is long with a honeyed sweetness and a hint of spice. Quite frankly, I had a hard time finding the bourbon for all of the honey. It'll appeal to some whiskey lovers, though. I'm scoring the Green River honey-finished bourbon an 89. This week's tasting notes are brought to you by Lost Lantern Whiskey. Serious about whiskey? Lost Lantern is too. Two whiskey nerds built Lost Lantern as a curator, not a distiller, tracking down distinctive casks from standout American producers. Think of Lost Lantern as an adventure in discovering the best American whiskey. Each bottle exploring a new distillery, a new story. It's proof that not all who wander are lost. Discover the whiskey producers you should know about with Lost Lantern, shining a light on the independent spirit. Let's open up the inbox now and see what people are talking about this week. Darren in Chicago caught me out on a mistake in last week's episode. Here's what he posted in the WhiskyCast community app. Just wanted to note, when you came back from the Glendalough ad, you said, let's start with the Glendalough Harrison Ford edition. Just thought I'd mention it. Not a problem. If Glendalough can also sign Mr. Ford for a whiskey, I may buy both. Thanks, Darren. Of course, I should have said the Glenmorangie Harrison Ford edition. Sorry about that. On last week's interview with Colin Spellman of Kings County Distillery and Emily Pennington of the American Craft Spirits Association on the new Certified Craft Seal program, Hugo Dart commented from Brazil. The Certified Craft program seems like an interesting way for small distilleries to stand out. More diversity on whiskey shelves is potentially a good thing, so I hope the program is effective. And Becky Harris of Catoctin Creek Distilling added this comment on Instagram. Love this program. It's important to talk about small and independent in spirits. Most people don't realize that 95% of what's on the shelf is a handful of multinationals. If you have something you'd like to share with the WhiskyCast lovers around the world, download the free WhiskyCast community app from your app store and join the conversation. You can also find us on social media. Look for WhiskyCast on X, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, and Facebook. Also, you can get us by email. The address is comments@whiskycast.com. Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and people who make whiskey unique. Let's go back to the Green River honey-finished bourbon for a moment. They finished it by adding honey to the whiskey. Well, how does that square with the rule that no flavorings can be added to a bourbon? One, they didn't label it as a straight bourbon, which opens the door to added flavorings. And two, there's a catch-all category in the TTB regulations for so-called distilled spirits specialties. It's a catch-all category for spirits that don't fit into other categories, and the use of flavorings and additives is allowed. When you submit a label to the TTB for approval, you pick the category you want your spirit to be certified under, and in this case, Green River picked the Whiskey Specialties category, which allows for flavorings to be added to the base spirit. That's how you work around the rule book. If you have something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, just get in touch with us. That's all for this episode of WhiskyCast. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskycast.com. That's also where you'll find the latest whiskey news, my tasting notes, the calendar of events, and a complete archive of our past episodes going back to 2005. We'd love to hear from you. Look for WhiskyCast on Blue Sky, X, Instagram, Threads, and Facebook. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com.
Our latest release of Dewar's 19-Year-Old Champions Edition, finished in Cabernet Franc wine casks, made for the 19th hole, and one worth having around when you get there. Keep an eye out for it. Cheers, friends.
WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2026, and comes to you each week from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening.